Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, my original channel. First of all, please like this video, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. If you want to donate something to the channel, that information is below in the description box, and you can also leave a super thanks. And also, please consider joining the Big Words LLC Newsletter. In addition to being a YouTube content creator, I'm also a writer with 2 blogs and a book project in process. Well, I enjoyed having them so much, I invited Dr. Antony Davies and James R. Harrigan back. They are the authors of Cooperation and Coercion and the content creators for the Words and Numbers podcast. Immigration is a controversial but an important topic, especially with the midterms coming up. And I thought it would be fun to get their perspectives on immigration. So what you're about to watch is part 1 of our discussion on immigration. Some of what's discussed might surprise you, as these aspects are not readily and openly talked about in other areas. So this is part 1. There are 2 parts to this. And once part 1 is over, I'm going to cut right to my credential slide. So once again, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to donate something to the channel, that information is below in the description box. And you can also leave a super thanks. And once again, please consider joining the Big Words LLC newsletter. Everyone stay safe out there. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. Please leave any questions or comments below in the comment section. All right, Antony and James, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for the first discussion and for agreeing to this follow-up. I'm seeing that partnerships in these digital spaces are fragile. So when you can continue to collaborate with quality individuals and content creators, that's always a plus. I want to start with a general question. After our previous discussion, commenters on here, they're always commenting, and you never know what they're going to say, which is part of the fun, but it's also a little agonizing too. Someone left an anti-conservative comment. So I think, and people hear things differently. 2 people will hear the same thing differently and glean different things from it. But I didn't think anything we talked about was particularly conservative. And I didn't think we were leaning in one direction or the other. We were talking economics and political science. The Words and Numbers podcast and Cooperation and Coercion. Did you guys intend that your content on your channel and that book, did you guys intend that to go straight down the middle? Or I don't get the sense you guys are leaning in a particular way.
It's interesting that you ask, because we actually thought about that quite a bit before we started. And to tell you the truth, I don't know if people will believe me, right? Because nobody ever believes anything. But it was very clear that we agreed that we were going to go wherever the evidence took us, that we were going to look at things, we were going to examine them through the lenses we were comfortable using, and wherever the evidence led, that's where we went. And if that meant ditching a previously held, even a dearly held political opinion, so be it. And I think we've been pretty good on that promise. And I'm sure.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the pieces of evidence is we've been called conservatives in a derogatory way, and we've been called liberals in a derogatory way. So there's You can either say that we offer something to everyone, or we can piss off everyone, whatever your
I think,
perspective is.
and I think the where you find that needle in the haystack, right? You have to give people the benefit of the doubt, and that doesn't happen all the time or even often enough in political discussions. But I think if anybody were to read the things that we've written or listen to the podcasts we've made and the guest appearances like this one here, I think they would walk away thinking, okay, I might not agree with everything those guys said, but it was all pretty reasonable.
Yeah, and to add to that, when we do have problems with people who listen, they disagree with us vehemently. Often they're disagreeing with something that's in their head.
That's
So
right.
we'll say something, and they'll read into it things that not only we didn't say, but things we don't believe, and then they'll
That's
start
right.
arguing against that. So I would caution anybody who reads our stuff, who listens to our stuff, just to listen to what we say. We're not implying something that's left unsaid here.
And it's funny too, because sometimes we'll get these tomes, just crazy nonsense that go on and on and on. I think we've gotten up to 10, 15 pages from a couple of people, and they seem to be wholly unaware that we had 700 words. That's what we could do. And if you think I'm going to cover the things that you cover in a 15-page screed in 700 words, well, I'm not. It's just not possible. And Ant kind of takes the high-minded approach. Every now and then I'll get into the mud and sling some with people, but it's hard to take them seriously when they make it so clear that they didn't read what they're angry about.
Okay, but doesn't it say something about both of you gentlemen are on Twitter. Both of you gentlemen are come from the academy. I don't know. Doesn't this say something about how the level of tribalism and how much this has all become a team sport? You're either on this side or this side. If you're not for me, you're against me. Doesn't that say something about how people have been socialized and kind of um, indoctrinated in modern times in our country?
Yeah, I think very much so, and it goes all the way to, if we say something that someone perceives is conservative, then in their minds they put us in that conservative box and attribute to us all sorts of things that they believe conservatives believe. So it's as if we live in this world where everybody must belong to one or the other box, and when you're in that box, you accept everything that's in that box.
Yeah,
And the game is just for people to figure out, well, which box is this guy in?
and the ridiculous part of it, Ant, is we spent 4 years criticizing Donald Trump, and his followers just set upon us with the craziest of nonsense. And then, okay, he goes away, and we get Joe Biden. Ant and I are busy criticizing Joe Biden too, and now it's the other side that says exactly the same nonsense that the Trump side said before. And what,
We're
of
Trump
course,
supporters, apparently.
yeah, apparently, which is absurd if you spent 1 minute looking or listening to anything we've ever done. And the way this all shakes out, it's almost impossible to get through to a certain percentage of the population. I think we've got to write them off. I think there's maybe, and I'm just kind of throwing numbers off the top of my head, but there's maybe 15, 20% on either side of the political divide who are so insistent upon having every single thing go through their lens, their faulty lens, that I don't think we can deal with them. I just don't. I try from time to time, and it's like I say whenever I debate someone in public. I'm not trying to win the debate against the person I'm debating. I'm trying to win the debate in the hearts and minds of the people who are watching, because I'll never get the one, but I might get the entire room if I just say the right words. And I think that's kind of where Ant and I are coming from at this point. We're looking for anybody reasonable enough to consider the arguments in their fullest scope.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze in something that wasn't in the 6 or 7 questions I sent you all. I just you all saw it on Twitter. I read a passage from Cooperation and Coercion, but I saw something interesting in the Washington Post there was an article about how I think it was entitled "Women are gonna they greatly impacted the 2018 election, and they may greatly impact the 2022 midterms," something to that effect. But what stood out to me, and I've done a lot of thinking about this, was that one woman said that she thought uh, our previous president, you all just mentioned, was a poor character, and her voting for President Biden had nothing to do with politics. So I'm fascinated by the fact that it's like voting. I mean, we're in election season. It's like a mixture of things. Um, in addition to whether or not you agree about the person's policy points and what policy points they're running on, you also have to like them. So, I think that's kind of one of the things I learned from the last few cycles was it's not just about the policy points. You have to like the person to some degree, and there are some voters who don't care about the policy points; they just care about liking the candidate. Um, So, I mean, I'm not asking you guys to respond to this, but I'm just saying that there are people who are looking at these things from several different lenses. All right, all right. Well, today's hot topic, and you all mentioned an individual who is deeply embedded in this hot topic. So this is going to be controversial, but a lot of fear was stoked in 2016, and I think it could arguably be linked even back to Al Qaeda and 9/11. But a lot of fear was stoked regarding the southern border and immigration, and it's something that I admittedly got caught up in myself. Part of the government's job is to protect for the general welfare and the common defense of the population, and thus fear of immigration was stoked. And Antony, one of the videos that you created surprised me because you put a positive spin on it. Um, so can both of you talk about the positives of immigration? Because what we're hearing, we're hearing that there's a battle going on. We're hearing all this bad news about the southern border, and people are pouring over, and people are being shipped to the bigger cities. But I wanted to talk to you guys to try to distill this out and get a more accurate picture, separate from all the fear and the propaganda.
And I'm going to start here, and I'm going to toss it to you for some numbers after I sketch out what we face here. I'm in Tucson, Arizona, which is roughly 90 miles from the Mexican border. So when the border stuff on the southern border gets all hot and crazy, it's right here in our backyard. And the weirdest things happen. The town that I'm living in, Tucson, is roughly 40% Mexican. And we have absolutely no problems with Mexicans and the other races living here. I live in the least racist place I've ever lived in my entire life. And I think Tucson is fantastic. But a family member called right after we moved here and said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I'm thinking, "Do about what?" And she said, the horde of Mexicans that are coming. I'm thinking, a horde? You got to be kidding me. And I said, "Well, we just hope they bring tacos, more tacos." And I can't explain to you what a non-issue it is here. It's difficult for people to get in, and families are separated because of what I would think of as a draconian set of policies that would serve to keep people out at almost every turn. I mean, it's fantastically difficult and expensive to immigrate here. And I think the people who say, "I'm for legal immigration," don't understand just how difficult and expensive it is. So that's something that Antony and I have been trying to tell people. But we also tell them about all the benefits of immigration, which they never really hear anywhere else. And Antony's got these numbers memorized like the back of his hand. So go at
Yeah,
it, have at
the
it.
the benefits are interesting because people when people argue against immigration, specifically illegal immigration, they'll say a number of things like, well, immigrants are taking American jobs. And I offer this list of 9 companies: Apple, Google, Amazon, eBay, Intel, Tesla, Yahoo, Capital One, and Kohl's. Those 9 companies were founded either directly by immigrants or by their immediate children of immigrants. Those 9 companies are worth $3 trillion and employ almost 1 million Americans. Now, put that in perspective. That's 9 immigrants, or the children of immigrants, who founded companies whose combined value exceeds everything we estimate that we pay to illegal workers in this country over the past 10 years. An entire decade's worth of wages paid to illegal workers is balanced, if you want to think of it as balanced, by 9 immigrants.
It's also roughly what we spend every year on the federal budget.
Yeah, right. The federal spending is round about that much annually, 3 trillion, 3 plus. Let's look at other businesses. If you look at small businesses, about 20% of them are founded by immigrants. That's more than 10 million jobs right there. If you look at large businesses, including the Fortune 500, immigrants or children of immigrants there account for another 40 million. They create another 40 million jobs. So that's in total 50 million jobs created by immigrants. So put it in perspective. That's 40%, 40% of all jobs in the United States having been created by 14% of the population. There's no argument here about immigrants taking American jobs. They are
right.
net producers of jobs.
They are creating American jobs everywhere you look. And if you think about it, just think about those companies and how much we all use them. Right? These are companies that are integral to American life at this point. Can you imagine a world in which there is no Amazon? How on earth would we have gotten through a pandemic in which we could not go to the store if we didn't have Amazon? Everybody out here was leaving cold sodas and snacks for the Amazon drivers. They felt so positive about the job they were doing. And when you put it all in perspective, it's a net win every single time, no matter how you break down the numbers. So what are people really worried about? And here, all I can say is I think they're afraid of what they don't actually know. They think that immigration works in a radically different way than it actually does. They worry that their children won't be able to find jobs. They don't think about how many jobs immigrants produce. They think about the jobs that they might be losing right this second. And I don't know that you can get around that all that easily. That takes a lot of work, and people have to be willing to assess the data. We scream it from the rooftops every time we get the chance, but then people yell at us and tell us that we're shills for one party or the other. So I don't know which party we're to blame for our version of immigration.
And I want to go back to this idea of legal immigration, because I think James is exactly right. In people's minds, they think, well, look, why are you coming in here illegally? Just come in legally. I'm for legal immigration. We spoke to a couple of people on Words and Numbers who are they're legal immigrants, about what you go through. And when James said it's expensive, that's an understatement.
Yeah, let me tell the story of what has to happen. So I had some former students in Iraq that wanted to come and live in the United States. And knowing them the way I do, I cheerfully wrote letters on their behalf. These are fantastic people, and we would absolutely want them here no matter what. But you can't really come here and immigrate. You have to come, if you're going to, from there, as an asylee. You have to be seeking asylum. So what's the first thing you have to do? You have to buy a round trip plane ticket, about $2,500, to go from Iraq to the United States. When you get to the U.S., you have to get off the plane. You have to have a visa, which says you're going to be, doing something that you have no intention of doing. And then you have to declare that if you go back to Iraq, you might well be killed for any of the following reasons. And this is undoubtedly true in the cases of the people I know who came. So they want asylum. And here's the thing, they can get in that line, no problem. However, you can't work, you can't have a job when you're doing that. So not only do you have to spend the $2,500 to get here, you have to live without working until the United States government gets its job done. Usually takes a year and a half. Now, how somebody can live for a year and a half without any income source whatsoever is befuddling. The people from Iraq where I lived make, on average, $300 a month. And you're going to tell them that they can't work for a year and a half, and they have to fly over. You can't be a partisan of legal immigration. It's not possible. And when you look at what people have to go through, the tens of thousands of dollars that add up, where do they go to live? How do they afford their lawyers? Right? These are very real questions. Also very real questions. How are they going to afford food and a place to live?
Yeah,
I don't.
and on top of all of that, you have to wait for this year where year and a half, and that's if you're lucky, where you're not allowed to work. You can't leave. You have to remain in the United States for that year and a half.
Not only that, you have to stay in the district you decided to file for asylum. So if that's in California, you can't go to Oklahoma for any reason whatsoever. Not going to happen.
And so at the end of the day, I'm speaking just for myself, I'd be more than happy to say, yes, I'm for legal immigration and we should stop illegal immigration if the legal immigration were reasonable.
That's right.
But we've made the rules just so draconian that only the very rich can satisfy.
They're unfathomable. But we could fix them quite easily. And you know, I'm a reasonable person, and Ant is too. And I understand that you probably can't have completely open immigration where you have a welfare state, right? Where people just get money from the government. Because the obvious problem is going to be that people come here in droves and they draw money out of the welfare programs. So all we would have to do is say you can immigrate freely, come anytime you want, but you can't sign up for welfare for 5 years. And who are we going to get? We're going to get industrious people who look at the United States the way Americans used to, and are willing to say, I am ready to bet everything on my ability to go there and make something great happen. Because that's what all immigrants used to say. And
let me give
we could have that again very quickly.
Let me give the flip side of that, because that's one of the other arguments, James brings up, that illegal immigrants come here, they use the welfare system, they don't pay taxes, and that's actually false.
That's right.
Paying taxes part.
That is very false.
Illegal immigrants pay property taxes, they pay sales taxes, they pay excise taxes. They don't pay income tax because they can't file because they're illegal. However, interestingly,
that's right.
Yeah, about half of them pay Social Security and Medicare taxes.
What? You got to be kidding me, right?
Yeah, and the way this works is you've got employers in this country who are employing these illegal immigrants. The employers are more concerned about running afoul of the IRS than they are running afoul of the immigration people. And so what happens is they'll either use fictitious Social Security numbers, they'll file under that, or Social Security itself will issue people what's called an ITIN, Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. That's an ITIN is for a non-citizen what a Social Security number is for a citizen. And so if you're an illegal, you can get an ITIN that enables you to pay Social Security, Medicare taxes. And here's the kicker. Illegal immigrants only are paying in about $13 billion a year to Social Security and Medicare, and that's complete pure profit for Social Security and Medicare. Because they're illegal, they won't draw down when they retire.
So they're paying for every legal person's retirement.
Yeah.
With the sweat of their brow. And that if that doesn't move you somehow to think, okay, we're probably not doing this right. I don't know what to tell you because that's insane.
Okay. Okay. You guys just said a lot there,
There was a lot.
much of which we typically don't hear, especially the last part. Um, so so reports of, and James, maybe you can better answer this. Reports of droves and droves and droves of illegals pouring over the over the border. Is that all propaganda? Is that
Yeah,
all? Is that all
well,
just?
no, look, there's a constant stream of Mexicans coming through our southern border. It's been that way for generations.
Yep.
And, you know, you have to ask yourself some obvious questions, right? Is it really a problem? There's a great question because the answer is not, seems like it's not. Um, do other groups, and the reasonable fear, I think you mentioned this earlier, was that nefarious actors from the Middle East are just going to fly to Mexico and come through our southern border. That seems not to have happened at all. And I find that to be kind of interesting because, frankly, that's what I would have done if I were them. That seems to be the easy way in. And yet, maybe it's not for reasons that none of us actually understand because they don't get here. The Mexicans come and the younger ones typically take jobs that Americans leave open decade after decade. They're picking fruit. They're doing very, very hard labor that Americans simply don't want to do.
Even working in at entry level fast food
Yeah,
Right.
you
restaurants.
can. There's Mexican restaurants literally all over town, and I'm guessing that if you went into the kitchen and found all the busboys and the dishwashers and whatnot, that you would find a lot of illegal immigrants working in these shops. The interesting thing, from where I sit, is that it doesn't seem to be a problem. And why do I think that? They never bring any kind of violence with them. I live in a very peaceful place. There's, it's a big city. There's going to be some crime here, but it's actually quite muted. I love it here. I'm not leaving.
And James, you're what, 20 miles from the border?
90 miles.
90 miles from the border. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there are people here who know that the Mexicans are coming in and they know the rough routes that they take on foot. And, in the height of summer, it's 118 degrees out there. And a lot of Tucsonians go down and leave bottles, gallon jugs of water everywhere, so people don't die in their walk here. And then, there are the legal immigration people go and they bring their knives and they cut the water and it goes into the ground. And, how heartless do you have to be that you think taking water away from somebody in 118-degree heat is the correct answer to something you don't care for? That's a death sentence. And I can't be party to that. I understand that the United States people, in their capacity as citizens, can, in fact, make whatever immigration policy they want. It's their right through their representatives to do so. What I'm asking, and I think what Ant is asking, is for people to consider some evidence, take a look at what they're actually accomplishing, and maybe simplify things right down to brass tacks, where you can maybe fill out the back of a postcard and try to immigrate. There are things that we could do that would make that possible. So you always have to ask, who's benefiting from the current system? And the answer is a lot of people who are not immigrants. If you follow the money, you're going to find people who are making their living because of the complexity of the system. And as long as you see that, I think it's pretty obvious that we could do better. So I hope one day we will.
Okay, I'm going to go back to your comment. You said they don't bring violence, and I was just thinking when you said that what was held up to us was MS-13, and also Kate. It was Kate Steinle in San Francisco. Her murder that was held up to us constantly about, and disparaging remarks the last president made about them during the 2016 election. So go ahead.
As for the gangs, I'm sure they're here. I've never seen them, right? And I think most Americans have never seen them. So I'm going to ask you to do something crazy. Believe your own two eyes. If you're not seeing it, it's probably not a problem. Because if it were as bad as the previous administration would have had you believe, it would have touched all of us. Now, I don't want to make light of a young woman who died as a result of an illegal immigrant, but Aunt, maybe you can address this if it saves one life business, because that's really where we are when we talk about immigration, given violence that does happen.
Yeah, yeah, and the fact is, you're in no effort, in no endeavor, whether it be immigration or COVID or wages or whatever, in no effort will we get to zero deaths. The
That's right.
cost of getting there is infinite. And so at some point you say, look, we've done as well as we can given our constraints and given other demands on our resources. And so what you find with immigrants, largely the incarceration rate for immigrants in this country is 20% that of non-immigrants. It's one
That's right.
fifth that of non-immigrants. So
Isn't
what
that something?
yeah,
Isn't
what
that
that tells
something?
me is if we're really concerned about crime, we should be deporting the non-immigrants. The immigrants are fine. It's the rest of us are their problem.
That's right. Go find all the white people in major cities, because
Right.
they're more violent year after year after year. And Aunt said something interesting a moment ago that I want to stress. We all would like to see every single policy work so perfectly that no one ever had to suffer. That's never going to happen. I'm sorry, but that's not how the world works. What we end up realizing is that you're going to have to make some trade offs. You're going to have to say, I want X, and to get X, I'll give you Y. Because nothing is free. A politician can't wave his arms around and make the world safe. It just doesn't work that way. He can wave his arms around and say, I want to make the world as safe as I can make it. And here's what we're willing to dedicate to that effort. That's what an honest politician would say. And how often have you heard anyone say such a thing? All we need is the right law. And as if by magic, all bad people will disappear.
Okay. All right. Well, gentlemen, I'm going to enable my screen share. People in the playback will see this. Antony and James wrote an article in U.S. News and World Report. It's here.
That was a long time ago.
I'm going to leave the link in the description box below. But I did a quick skim of it, and I believe it contains many of the facts and figures that Antony, you just quoted for us.
So this was written quite a while back, and I think I'm pretty comfortable saying that I'm going to stand by everything that's in that article. I don't remember anything coming to light after we wrote that had me changing my mind about something.
Okay. Well, everyone, that's going to be below in the description box, so you can read it for yourself and add to your body of knowledge versus what you're seeing on the mainstream news and the many quarrels you're seeing on Twitter. Okay, so you guys outlined a whole bunch of positives for immigration.